thing I know, she's kind of like grabbing on my arm.
I don't remember much after I said I was gonna pass out.
It happened in Louisiana before 300 guests. It was 100 degrees outside.
Weddings are meant to be magical and unforgettable, but when things go wrong, they go viral. From collapsing cakes and runaway horses to fainting brides and furious grooms, even the most perfect day can spiral into chaos. These are 20 real moments caught on camera that shocked guests, broke the internet, and left couples wishing they could disappear. No fiction, no filters, just raw, unplanned reality from the biggest day of their lives. So let's begin with the bride who collapsed seconds after saying, "I do." 1. The bride who fainted after saying, "I do." On a blazing hot afternoon in Louisiana, Catherine Frank was about to live her dream wedding. It was the 7th of July, 2023, and the temperature soared close to 100 degrees Fahrenheit. Catherine, 28, and her fiancé Alex, 26, were standing at the altar before 300 guests. The ceremony had been going smoothly until Catherine suddenly felt lightheaded. Just moments after saying her vows, she whispered to Alex that she might faint. And she did, right there in front of everyone. In her own words, she remembered seeing boots around her face as she lay on the ground. Her father and Alex, both wearing cowboy boots, tried to help her up, while others rushed in to cool her down. What made it worse was that Catherine fainted not once, but 3 times during the ceremony. Still determined to finish, she pushed through and said her final vows despite her condition. Later, on the bus heading to the reception, she became sick again. The following day, she landed in the emergency room where doctors confirmed she was severely dehydrated and possibly fighting off a minor virus. Although the day didn't go as planned, Catherine now laughs about it with Alex. They got their vows in, the photos were captured, and unfortunately, the footage of her dramatic collapse made its way around the internet. But if nothing else, it made for one unforgettable "I do." 2. The groom who fell off his horse during a grand entrance. In many Sikh and Indian weddings, it's tradition for the groom to arrive on a horse, symbolizing honor, strength, and royalty. But one ceremony in Surrey, Canada didn't quite go according to plan. The groom, fully dressed in ceremonial attire, approached a white horse named Misty. From the beginning, the horse seemed nervous, circling and showing signs of distress. As the handler tried to calm it down and urged guests to stay quiet, the tension escalated. Then, without warning, the horse bolted. The groom was thrown off its back, landing on the grass with a loud thud. His turban flew off, and the guests immediately rushed to check on him. Luckily, he wasn't seriously hurt, just shaken and winded. Some blamed the fall on the groom's decision not to remove his ceremonial sword and shoes before mounting, both of which may have startled the horse. Others said the mounting was done from the wrong side, unfamiliar to most horses. Regardless of the cause, the moment went viral, partly because the guests caught the entire fall on camera. Despite the embarrassing tumble, the groom recovered and the ceremony continued, albeit with a slightly bruised ego. In the end, the video served as an accidental lesson in respecting animals and rethinking traditions when safety is at stake. Now let's move from four-legged chaos to an incident that didn't involve a horse, but did bring down a towering cake in a room full of expectations. 3. The waiter who destroyed a 5-tier cake with a champagne slam. It was meant to be a show-stopping moment, the bride and groom standing beside a towering 5-tier wedding cake, ready for the grand cutting. The photographer was in place, the guests had gathered, and the champagne was flowing. But then the waiter arrived, holding a bottle of bubbly with a bit too much flair. As he approached the table, instead of gently placing the bottle beside the cake, he slammed it down. The entire table jolted. Guests gasped as the towering cake swayed left, then right, then forward, until it finally toppled over in slow-motion disaster. Layers of cake crashed to the ground, frosting splattered across the floor, and the room fell into stunned silence. What was meant to be the centerpiece of the celebration had turned into a sugary wreck. The bride looked horrified, the groom speechless. No one got a slice, and the cake-cutting moment was gone. Some guests tried to laugh it off, others were just uncomfortable. The waiter stood frozen. Some blamed him, others said the table was unstable from the start. Either way, the video, complete with gasps and stunned reactions, quickly spread online. While no one was hurt, the memory of the cake crash became the day's most talked about moment. And just when you thought dessert was the last thing to go wrong, the next groom barely made it to his own wedding, thanks to an elevator that decided to hold him hostage. 4. The groom who got stuck in an elevator before his ceremony. Brandon Valdez had everything ready, his tux, his vows, and a tight wedding day schedule. But on the morning of his big day, while staying at the Best Western Clover in the United States, fate decided to throw in a surprise. As Brandon and 6 of his groomsmen entered the hotel elevator to head to the ceremony, the doors closed and never reopened. For more than an hour, the group was stuck between floors. They called for help, notified family members, and tried their best to stay calm. But no one told the bride. Misty, already getting ready, was kept in the dark to avoid panic. While hotel staff contacted emergency services, the local fire department arrived and eventually pried open the doors, freeing Brandon and his groomsmen. Although he was late to the altar, the ceremony did go on. Misty learned what happened only minutes before he walked in. There was one downside, though. The photo session at the church had to be scrapped due to the delay. The hotel offered the couple a discount on a future stay, though locals Brandon and Misty weren't exactly rushing to book another night. With the groom finally free and the wedding back on track, this next moment proves that even professionals can take a misstep, especially when backing up for the perfect shot. 5. The photographer who backed into a fountain. In the world of wedding photography, getting the perfect angle often means moving fast, and sometimes moving backward. That's exactly what happened at one ceremony when the photographer, focused intently on capturing the bride and groom's walk away from the altar, took one step too many. Without noticing the large decorative fountain behind him, the photographer stumbled and plunged straight in. It wasn't a shallow splash. The water was waist-high, cold, and completely unexpected. As guests gasped and the bride covered her mouth in disbelief, the photographer bobbed up, soaked from head to toe. His camera, worth thousands, went in with him. Thankfully, several people rushed to help. The camera was quickly rescued and appeared salvageable. The photographer, though visibly embarrassed, shook it off and kept working, albeit with a few towels and backup gear. The video, naturally, ended up online. It became a cautionary tale for anyone trying to multitask while walking backward. Despite the mishap, the couple still got their photos, and the moment, both humorous and humbling, became one more story to share over the years. And while one photographer took a plunge unintentionally, the next one did the very same, but in a much larger body of water. 6. The photographer who fell into a lake, mid-shoot. A serene lakeside wedding, beautiful lighting, and a perfect backdrop. Everything seemed to align for a magical day. That is, until the wedding photographer, aiming to capture the couple from just the right distance, kept stepping backward without noticing how close she was to the edge. In an instant, she lost her footing and plunged straight into the lake. One moment she was adjusting her lens, the next, she was chest-deep in cold water, gasping in shock. The crowd stood frozen, unsure whether to laugh or help. Eventually, several guests pulled her out, drenched and stunned, but thankfully uninjured. To everyone's relief, the camera was securely strapped and didn't go under with her. Somehow, the footage survived, and so did the photographer's sense of humor. She even cracked a smile once back on dry land, though she continued the shoot a bit soggier than planned. The couple, trying to maintain the celebratory spirit, moved on quickly. But the mood had undeniably shifted. Photos were taken, the schedule resumed, but everyone kept glancing toward the lake, as if expecting the next guest to follow suit. After that unexpected swim, we moved to another moment by the water, this time involving a very nervous groom, a loose wedding band, and a deep lake. 7. The groom who dropped the wedding ring into a lake. There are few things more stressful than holding the wedding ring during the ceremony, especially when it's outdoors and near water. That's exactly what happened to Andrew during his wedding at Lake Tahoe. As the ceremony unfolded and guests watched with smiles, He reached into his pocket for the ring and fumbled. Before anyone could react, the ring slipped from his fingers, bounced once on the wooden dock, and fell through a small crack, straight into the freezing water below. The crowd gasped. Andrew and his bride Marley immediately dropped to their knees, trying to spot the ring through the planks. There it was, glittering 5 feet below on a rock. For a split second, Andrew considered diving in, but the officiant warned against it, citing hypothermia risks. The ceremony continued, ringless. Marley lightheartedly mimed tossing her own ring before slipping it onto Andrew's finger. Though the moment was tense, they handled it with humor and grace. The next day, a local diver named Phil from Tahoe Scuba retrieved the ring. He dropped a pebble through the same crack, matched its landing point, and dove in. Moments later, he surfaced, ring in hand. With the crisis resolved, the couple had both a story and a symbol of perseverance. But the next group didn't just lose a ring. They lost the entire dock beneath them. 8. The wedding party that fell into the lake. When the dock collapsed. For Dan and his bride, the wedding had been nearly flawless. The venue was scenic, the guests were cheerful, and the photos were going to be stunning. For the group shot, the photographer suggested assembling everyone on a charming wooden dock by the lake. It seemed like a perfect idea, until it wasn't. As the bride, groom, bridesmaids, and groomsmen lined up, the dock began to creak under the weight. A few uneasy glances were exchanged, but before anyone could suggest stepping off, the entire platform gave way. In seconds, most of the wedding party found themselves flailing in the cold lake. Only a few guests on the edge managed to jump clear. Screams and laughter echoed as soggy dresses, floating shoes, and drenched tuxedos filled the scene. Fortunately, no one was hurt. Towels were handed out, hair was restyled, and makeup was quickly redone. The wedding resumed after just a brief delay, though some guests claimed the unexpected swim became the real highlight of the day. From waterlogged disasters to truly inappropriate behavior, the next moment wasn't wet, but it certainly left guests frozen in place. 9. The groom who slapped his bride. During cake-cutting weddings are known for emotional highs, but sometimes things take a dark turn. At one wedding, believed to be an arranged marriage, the atmosphere was already tense. The bride and groom didn't seem overly enthusiastic, but what unfolded next left guests horrified. During the cake-cutting ceremony, the groom fed a small piece to the bride. When it was her turn, she teased him playfully, pulling the cake away before feeding it to him. What should have been a light moment quickly escalated. In full view of guests and cameras, the groom slapped the bride hard across the face. The room fell silent. Gasps turned into stunned stares. Some guests were visibly in tears, others frozen in disbelief. The bride stood still, confused and humiliated, while the groom looked unapologetic. The video went viral almost immediately. Viewers around the world condemned the act, with many calling it a shocking violation of basic decency. One commenter noted, "That groom needs more than a lesson in manners. He needs a lesson in human rights." The rest of the ceremony was clearly strained. While the couple did complete their vows, the energy was gone. It was a moment that many attendees and internet viewers couldn't forget. And from one emotional outburst, we now turn to a different kind of meltdown, this time from the bride herself. 10. The bride who lost her temper on her wedding day. Emotions run high on wedding days, and for one bride, the pressure finally boiled over. Already dressed and waiting, she learned that the printed wedding program, meant to be delivered hours earlier, still hadn't made it to the church. That small but meaningful detail set off a chain reaction of frustration. To make matters worse, during a phone call with her groom, she discovered he was still undressed and running behind schedule. The bride, feeling overwhelmed and unheard, exploded. In front of her makeup team, friends, and even the photographer, she vented loudly and tearfully about the delays, the disorganization, and her fear that the day would be ruined. Her crew tried to calm her down, offering reassurance and quick solutions, but the bride was locked in a spiral of anger and anxiety. Some guests who overheard the outburst later admitted they weren't sure the ceremony would go on at all. Eventually, the groom arrived, the program showed up, and the ceremony did proceed. But the bride's meltdown became one of the most talked about moments of the day, not just for its intensity, but for how it revealed just how overwhelming wedding day expectations can be. From one emotional freeze at the altar, we move to a moment where music, not people, stopped the celebration in its tracks. 11. The bride who refused to enter because the music was wrong. For many brides, the entrance is one of the most personal and unforgettable parts of the entire day. It's the moment that sets the emotional tone, and for one bride, the right song meant everything. But as she stood ready at the entrance of the venue, surrounded by her bridesmaids and a nervous crowd, the music began, and it wasn't the song she had chosen. Instantly, she froze. Her face shifted from excitement to confusion, then to disbelief. Her family encouraged her to walk, suggesting that maybe the wrong track wasn't a big deal. But for her, it was. She had envisioned this entrance for months, perhaps even years, and the wrong music shattered that mental picture. She refused to move. Guests sat awkwardly, waiting. The ceremony coordinator scrambled to correct the mistake, but the bride stood firm, arms crossed, clearly emotional. It wasn't until her exact track finally began to play that she walked in, composed but visibly shaken. The rest of the ceremony went smoothly, but many attendees later recalled that frozen moment at the doorway more than the vows themselves. It was a reminder that even the smallest detail, if overlooked, can throw everything off balance. As we leave behind misplayed music and emotional standoffs, we step into a far more light-hearted embarrassment, though no less unforgettable. 12. The bride who was missing half her dress, mid-ceremony. Dubai-based bride, Becky Jeff had envisioned a flawless walk down the aisle, and at first, that's exactly how it looked. But as she stood at the altar, ready to exchange vows, something felt off. The breeze gave it away. The back of her wedding dress, an essential panel, was completely missing. Instead of panicking, Becky did something rare and admirable. She calmly took the microphone, smiled at her guests, and explained the situation out loud. Laughter broke the tension, and what could have been a wardrobe disaster became a moment of charm. Guests and bridesmaids quickly rallied to locate the missing piece. Within minutes, someone returned with the detached section of fabric. It was fastened into place, and the ceremony resumed without further issue. Becky's grace under pressure won over everyone present and the internet. The clip was later shared on TikTok, racking up millions of views. People admired not just the dress, but Becky's attitude. She showed that even when things go unexpectedly wrong, a little humor and confidence can save the moment. From fashion mishaps, we now switch gears to an even more public stumble, one that involved a scooter, a speed bump, and a groom who didn't look back. 13. The bride who fell off her scooter during her grand exit. As far as wedding exits go, this one was bold. A young bride and her husband decided to make a memorable escape from the ceremony on an electric scooter. She sat side saddle on the back, her long gown flowing, while the groom took the handlebars. Guests gathered outside to wave them off, cameras ready to capture the moment. But no one had considered the speed bump just beyond the venue gates. As the scooter rolled forward, it hit the bump with more bounce than expected. The groom stayed steady, but the bride, seated without support, slipped and tumbled off the back. Her gown snagged, her veil flew, and she landed hard, right in front of cheering guests. The real kicker? The groom didn't notice she was gone. He kept riding for several more seconds before someone shouted, prompting him to look back. Meanwhile, guests and onlookers rushed to help the bride up. She wasn't injured, but her pride took a hit. With grass stains and wind-blown hair, she laughed it off as best she could. The video quickly circulated online, becoming both a cautionary tale and an instant classic. And while it was awkward in the moment, it's safe to say that no one present would ever forget it. From a fall at the exit, we now move to a fall at the entrance. this time involving a dramatic lift that ended up taking down the entire couple. 14. The couple that fell off the stage. During their first dance entrance, some couples make a grand entrance. Others go straight to the dance floor. But one couple decided to do both at the same time. As they entered the reception hall, the bride beamed, and the groom had something special in mind. He lifted her onto his back with flair, intending to twirl or dip once they reached the center of the floor. Unfortunately, they never made it that far. Just as they stepped onto the slightly raised stage, the groom lost his balance. His foot caught the edge of the platform, and both he and the bride toppled off, landing hard in front of their stunned guests. There was a brief moment of silence, then laughter, and then cheering. The bride popped up, arms raised in the air, and began dancing. The groom followed her lead. What could have been a painfully awkward disaster turned into a spontaneous moment of joy. Their guests applauded their spirit, and the reception continued with even more energy than before. The incident was captured on video and widely shared online. Commenters praised the couple's quick recovery and infectious attitude. They didn't let a fall ruin the evening. In fact, it might have been the best icebreaker of all. And next, we head into yet another lift gone wrong, this time during a dance, and it didn't end quite as gracefully. 15. The groom who dropped his bride during their first dance. The first dance is usually a tender and symbolic moment, a chance for the newlyweds to soak in the joy of their union. But sometimes, enthusiasm oversteps ability. That's exactly what happened at one wedding where the groom decided to add flair by lifting his bride mid-dance. Both dressed in matching pink, they glided across the floor until the groom attempted the lift. For a brief second, it looked picture perfect, but then his grip faltered. The bride's weight shifted backward, and in a blink, the couple lost balance and tumbled to the ground. The entire room gasped. Then, in a moment that changed the mood completely, the couple embraced the mishap. Lying there in laughter, they shared a spontaneous kiss that brought the guests to their feet in applause. Their ability to turn the accident into a celebration showed their strength as a couple. Though the groom later admitted he'd never practiced the move before the wedding, the footage of their fall and their recovery was praised online for its authenticity. And while this fall ended sweetly, the next wedding wasn't as charming. It featured a bride, a groom, and a sandstorm so strong it nearly swept their ceremony away. 16. The dust storm that crashed an Arizona wedding. On the 9th of July, 2011, Gus and Jennifer Luna prepared to exchange vows under the open Arizona sky. Everything was going smoothly. Friends and family were gathered. The ceremony had begun. But nature had other plans. From the horizon, a massive wall of dust, known locally as a haboob, began rolling in. At first, it was a distant haze. Within minutes, it was unavoidable. The sky darkened, the wind picked up, and guests began to shield their faces. Gus noticed the storm first and urged the officiant to speed things up. Ironically, they had included a symbolic sand ceremony in their vows, not knowing nature was about to provide far more sand than expected. As the dust hit, guests clutched umbrellas and scarves. Jennifer, though caught off guard, managed to laugh through it, even as their first married kiss was interrupted by gritty air and flying debris. Despite the chaos, the couple completed their ceremony. Later, they joked that if their marriage could survive a haboob at the altar, it could survive anything. And from weather-induced mayhem, we now head to a first dance that went from impressive to dangerous in a matter of seconds, thanks to one miscalculated flip. 17. The groom who knocked out his bride with a backflip. Dance floor stunts are a growing trend at weddings, and for one couple, the groom wanted to make a statement. Muhammad and his bride had rehearsed their entrance, but during the first dance, he added a surprise move, a backflip. At first, it seemed he had the skill. His timing was bold, his confidence high. But in execution, things went sideways, literally. His legs extended further than expected, and his foot struck his bride squarely in the head. She dropped instantly, completely dazed, and the music ground to a halt. Muhammad, trying to salvage the moment, awkwardly continued dancing, only to accidentally nudge her again before realizing the seriousness of what had happened. Guests rushed forward. The bride regained consciousness within moments, but it was clear the celebration had taken a turn. Later footage showed the slow-motion impact, which made its way online and sparked countless discussions about over-the-top wedding performances. While the bride was not seriously injured, the moment changed the tone of the evening. A lesson was learned. Just because you can backflip doesn't mean you should, especially not during your first dance. And speaking of wardrobe surprises, the next mishap wasn't choreographed. It happened right at the altar, in front of the entire audience. 18. The best man whose pants dropped at the altar. Ceremonial duties can come with nerves, but for one best man, it was his outfit, not his speech, that stole the spotlight. As he stepped forward to hand over the wedding rings, his trousers slipped right down to his ankles. There was no warning. 1 second, he stood confidently beside the couple. The next, his legs were exposed, revealing brightly striped underwear to the entire gathering. The audience burst into laughter. The bride doubled over, and even the priest struggled to maintain composure. 7 bridesmaids, all in matching dresses, turned crimson, trying not to laugh. For a few seconds, the ceremony dissolved into a comedy show. The best man, mortified but good-humored, quickly pulled his trousers up and gave an exaggerated bow. No one could focus on the vows for the next few minutes. But rather than ruin the mood, the mishap lightened it. Tension evaporated, and the couple themselves couldn't stop smiling. Later, the bride admitted that the fall of the pants actually helped her relax. The incident made the rounds online, and while the best man swore off suspenders forever, the clip turned him into a minor viral sensation. And while this moment was funny and harmless, the next story was far more chaotic, featuring smashed bottles, flying champagne, and a groom in full meltdown mode. 19. The groom who had a full meltdown. During cake-cutting weddings are emotional events, but rarely do emotions explode as they did during this cake-cutting disaster. As the couple prepared to slice into their wedding cake, the groom appeared visibly agitated. A minor hiccup in cutting the cake seemed to set him off. He grabbed a chunk of cake aggressively and shoved it into his own mouth, then forcefully smeared it onto the bride's face, not in jest, but with frustration. The guests, confused at first, began murmuring. Moments later, a guest opened a bottle of champagne nearby. That's when it escalated. The groom snatched the bottle, shook it, sprayed it across the room, then smashed it onto the ground. Glass flew everywhere. Before anyone could react, he made a move to knock the entire cake off the table. At that point, guests intervened. Several men physically restrained him, guiding him out before things could spiral further. The bride stood silent, wiping her face, visibly shaken. Though no one was harmed, the reception ended abruptly. The footage, intense, unexpected, and difficult to watch, circulated widely online, prompting fierce debate about stress, public behavior, and the pressures placed on couples during weddings. And finally, we end with 2 bonus moments so bizarre they could only be called viral classics, both caught on camera, both completely unforgettable. 20. The 2 viral moments that made everyone cringe. Not all wedding fails are elaborate. Some are brief, shocking, and strange enough to echo through internet history. The first bonus moment happened just as the bride and groom were being introduced to their guests. As they turned to face the room, the groom let out a loud, unmistakable fart. At first, people thought it was a joke. Then came the smell. Laughter, disbelief, and some mild horror followed. One guest fainted, another gagged. And the video? It exploded online, with countless replays and comment sections filled with disbelief. But the second moment might have been worse. In another wedding, a groom chose a female friend as his best woman, a lovely modern touch. But during the ceremony, he reached across and grabbed her backside right in front of the bride. The room froze. The bride's expression changed instantly. The ceremony halted. The silence was brutal. Within minutes, the wedding was over. That clip, too, found its way online, drawing condemnation and disbelief. Neither of these weddings ended on a high note, but they did enter internet infamy. Together, they remind us that even 1 second can rewrite the entire day. Because when cameras are rolling and the stakes are high, wedding fails don't just happen, they get remembered. With these two last, we have reached the end of today's video. If you have come this far with us, be sure to check out other videos on the channel.